welcome throughout the presentation, and we will leave time for questions at the end. Please type your questions into the chat area on the Adobe Connect webinar screen. Without further ado, I would like to introduce our presenter, Noemi Mendez-Ellison. Noemi is a data dissemination specialist at the U.S. Census Bureau. She is responsible for public outreach and census data education, where she shows data users how to use census data for grants, news stories, and business plans. Prior to joining the Census Bureau, Noemi was employed as a GIS logistics consultant in the private and public sectors. She holds a bachelor's degree in geography and international relations from Syracuse University. She is a graduate of 1997. Noemi will give an overview of the Census Bureau and the types of data the agency collects. She will talk about how she helps the public understand and use census data to understand their communities and to plan for the future. Also, Noemi will talk about and demonstrate how to use the census.gov website to access data. And Noemi, the floor is yours.
Okay, thanks so much. And I'd like to thank the university for being very forward-thinking and putting together this webinar series. I found out about it through Twitter, and I jumped at the opportunity to connect with alumni and to let other alumni know, what I'm doing, what my agency does. So I think this is a really great platform. So I'm going to go ahead and get started. And like Jenna said, feel free to put your questions in the chat box. We'll have plenty of time for questions and answers. So I'm going to start off by once again saying my name is Noemi Mendez-Ellison, and I'm with the U.S. Census Bureau. So what I'm going to talk about this afternoon is census data and how I work with the public on how to access data, and what I'll talk a little bit about some case studies that I have so you can get an idea of maybe ways that you can utilize the census data. So a little bit about my agency. Our motto is to serve as the leading source of quality data about the nation's people and economy. So basically, what does the census do? We measure America. A lot of people don't realize all of the different data surveys and censuses that we conduct throughout the year, and we have tons of information that everyone can use, and best of all, it's all free. It's on our website, and people like myself can help you access the data. We're under the U.S. Department of Commerce. We're one of many data collection agencies. We've been conducting censuses since the 1790s, and we became a full-fledged agency in 1902, so we've been around for a very, very long time. So I wanted to start off by talking a little bit about Syracuse. That was home for us for many, many years, and I just kind of wanted to show you some of the latest data that we have available from a tool on our website called QuickFacts. So there's a lot of different data that's available on there, so I'm just going to give you a really quick snapshot. The population per square mile is 5,796.8. Also, the estimated population for 2014 is 144,142 people. The city is 52.3% female, and there are approximately 6,223 veterans. The mean travel time to work is about 18 minutes, 17.9 minutes. The median household income is $31,566. That's lower than the national average. Right now, the national median income is about $51,000, and there are approximately 3,047 minority-owned businesses. These facts come from various surveys that we do. One's called the American Community Survey, and I'm going to talk a little bit about that this afternoon. We also have surveys on the economy called the Economic Census, and that's where the business data comes from. So a little bit about me. Like Jenna mentioned, I'm a graduate of the class of 1997. I hold degrees from Arts and Sciences or Maxwell School in International Relations and Geography. I really liked the geography part of it. I thought it was a great major to have. At that point when I graduated, we were the second smallest major on campus. There were about 13 of us. The second smallest major at that time was history. They had 11. So it was a really great environment to be around because it was very hands-on. We had some really great professors, and I felt I really learned a lot to help me with my future career. I wanted to, go ahead and continue my geography education. So I've been working with the census for about 13 years now. And I have a lot of different experiences working in the private and public sector that all sort of helped me get to where I am today. So my title is called, I'm a data dissemination specialist, which is a very special title. Basically what I do is I work with the public to help them find and access census data, whether or not they're a small business owner or somebody who's writing a grant for a nonprofit, or I work a lot with the media when they're writing stories about census data. I'm the go-to person. I cover 2 states. I cover Pennsylvania and Delaware, and probably about 70% of my time I'm what's called out in the field, where I'm conducting presentations or webinars like the one you're sitting through today. I do a lot of hands-on workshops where we work in a classroom environment with laptops, and I'll show people how to do some hands-on activities on getting data from our website. I also staff exhibits at conferences. I was recently at the Special Libraries Association conference here in Philadelphia, working with librarians who had questions about my agency, the types of data that we collect, and all sorts of stuff. I also spend a good amount of time answering inquiries from the public. Sometimes they're what I call a cold inquiry, where someone will call or email and say, I'm looking for data for education rates for the city of Philadelphia, or other things like that, or somebody attends one of my presentations or workshops and they want me to work with them to find more information about the topic that they're looking at. So everything I do is I'm always working with the public. So I'm going to start, the next few slides are some maps. Remember, my degree's in geography, so I'm a big map person, just to illustrate with you some of the different ways that I've worked with people on using census data. So for instance, this is a map from a tool that we have on Census.gov that's called American FactFinder. And this is a really great tool. I'm going to do a demonstration towards the end of our time. But one of the great things that it does is it provides a data visualization, in this instance a map, that communities can use when they're putting together a grant. For instance, they can make a copy of the map and put it in their grant application to really illustrate the story that they're telling about their local community. So in this instance, this is a map showing the percent below poverty rate by census tract for a neighborhood in North Philadelphia. So if you're not familiar with North Philadelphia, it's a historically Hispanic community. It's a very poor community. It's sort of being surrounded by other gentrified neighborhoods, so there's a lot of sort of housing pressures that are going on. So with this instance, I was working with a nonprofit who does quite a few things. They do some after-school tutoring, they do job placement, they do quite a few things to try to help the community. They've been around for 30+ years, so they know the area really well. And I did a workshop with them, and one of the things that they were interested in is looking at poverty data for their area. They knew that there was quite a bit of poverty going on, but they really needed the data to sort of really reinforce their grant, to show the grantor why it is that they needed money for this particular grant. So this map is pretty interesting because it shows for the area that they cover by census tract. Now, a census tract is a sort of imaginary geography that the census puts together. Every city, every county, every state has census tracts. And what they're used to break up a community into areas where you can get data for. So for instance, a census tract has a population threshold of between 6,000 and 8,000 people. And here are the census tracts for the community that this nonprofit operates in. We have different types of geography that you can get data for, all the way from the block group level, which is city blocks that are put together, to census tracts, to zip codes, to counties, to states, all the way up to the U.S. We also have data for our island areas and for Puerto Rico, and they all have these census tracts. So this legend is showing the darker green areas are where there's more concentration of poverty in this particular neighborhood. Now, Philadelphia is a really interesting case where it's the 5th biggest city in the nation, but it's the number one city in the top 10 cities that have the most people in poverty. Okay, so some data about the city of Philadelphia. There's a little bit over 1.5 million people. And about 26.7% of the people in the city of Philadelphia are in poverty. Okay, that's a huge number. So the city has a lot of things that it's dealing with as far as trying to work with people in poverty. 37% of the children under 18 in the city of Philadelphia are in poverty, and of the 26.7% people that are in poverty, 42% of those people are of Hispanic Latino origin. So because this community is a very Hispanic Latino area, you'll find concentrations of people that are in poverty. So this is an example of how to use the data through American FactFinder that I worked with a nonprofit. Now, another thing that I do is I work a lot with businesses who are looking for data for their target markets, for business planning, to take out bank loans. I work a lot with entrepreneurs who are looking for information that they can use, when they're starting their business. Or sometimes they already have a business put together, but they're looking to expand. We have a tool on our website called Census Business Builder. This is a new tool for us. It's probably been out for about a year now, and what it does is it's similar to FactFinder, but it's a little bit different in that you can map data. So you can map data for your industry. You can also map data, demographic data, and you can make maps and you can pull reports. And this is based on a Google Earth sort of platform. So if you're familiar with working with Google Earth, which most of us are at this point, it's pretty easy to use. So this map that I'm showing you here is a concentration of people 18 and over for the center city area of Philadelphia going into West Philadelphia. So for instance, I've worked with people who own food trucks and they're interested in serving a certain community. For instance, this map, I worked with a gentleman who owned a food truck out in West Philadelphia, and if you know that area, there's a concentration of universities. University of Pennsylvania is there, Drexel University, Children's Hospital of Philadelphia. There's quite a few schools out there, so there's a lot of hungry college students. So he had a really popular food truck. He would sell hamburgers, and he was doing really, really well, but he was interested in opening up a retail storefront to get the source of income in. So we looked at a few different data sets. We looked at this data set of 18 and over. We looked at data by median income. We looked at, where there were other businesses like his, so they can get an idea. Business owners can say, well, where are those open target markets that maybe I'm not reaching into? Where are those markets where there's other industries like mine? So what's my competition? There's a lot of different ways to use the data. So this data goes down to what we call the neighborhood level, which is once again census tracts. You can get data by zip code. You can get data for the entire city or town, or data by country. So there's a lot of really cool ways to use this information. Now, government uses. We work a lot with governments, various forms from local to state to federal, who use our data. And one of the things that has really been a new sort of market for us ourselves is disaster planning or emergency management. That's really a hot topic. You the past few months, if you've been watching the news, you've been hearing about fires and flooding, and how do governments plan for those disaster efforts? We have a tool called On the Map for Emergency Management, and here's a screenshot of the map. And this is sort of a really neat tool where it takes census demographic data and it mashes it up with another sort of Google Earth platform. But what's neat about this tool is that every 6 hours, it pulls in any federal disaster declarations that have come through. So emergency planners can look at what are the potential sort of people who could be affected by these storms. So you can get data by race, you can get data by disability, by poverty level, languages, all sorts of different demographic factors. So when they have a storm that's come through or is about to come through, they can project what kind of relief efforts do they need to put together in order to work with the population that's affected. This is a screenshot of Hurricane Sandy, which hit us in 2012. And I worked with a couple state governments right after the hurricane kind of came through, and they were looking for data for the areas that were going to be affected. So this is a screenshot of Monday, October 29th at about 2 p.m. General Mountain Time. And this is the infamous left hook. If anybody was kind of following the path of Sandy, this is really where it made a really critical turn and it really affected more people that some people were expecting. You can see the forecast area that's called the cone of uncertainty. NOAA has pilots that go out and fly into these events, into these hurricanes, and they're the ones that help forecast what are the potential forecast area for these events. So Hurricane Sandy was a pretty big one. I don't live very far from the Jersey Shore, and we're still feeling the effects of the storm, where there's still people who have been displaced and businesses that have not come back because of the storm. So Hurricane Sandy affected 24 different states. It caused over $74 billion in damages, and it made landfall in Brigantine, New Jersey. And that's a screenshot of Brigantine, New Jersey. It's just right above Atlantic City. So that's really the area, the New Jersey Shore area, that really felt a lot of the damage from the hurricane itself. So what this map is showing is the population in households that lived there that were affected by the storm. So you can see some of the darker blue areas had between just under 3,000 to about 6,000 different people in households. So when the emergency teams went out and, the Governor Christie had declared this area one of those zones where people had to leave their homes, they had an idea of the evacuation routes and how many people they needed to evacuate. And this is all using census data. So what I'm going to talk about is, what we call the other 9 years. The census is known for coming out every 10 years and conducting the U.S. Census. That's where we go out and we hit every home. You get forms in the mail, and we ask people to fill out the census, right? And that's in the U.S. Constitution. That's the reason that there is a Census Bureau, is that we have to go out and enumerate all the residents as of April 1st of the decennial year. And then what do we do with that data? That goes for the apportionment for the House, okay? They're the ones, the data goes to the states, they do their redistricting, and then that goes into their congressional seats, their state legislative districts, et cetera, et cetera. The next census is coming out in 2020, so the next few years you'll start seeing some advertising, flyers, about the census and how important it is to fill out. We're doing things a little bit different for the next census. Well, you'll be able to do the form, not only a mail form, but online. You can do it on the phone with someone, so keep an eye out for that. So what do we do when we're not conducting the census? I always say it's what we call the other 9 years, okay? Every year we conduct over 100 different censuses and surveys. So that's a lot of data that we're collecting. The biggest one that we collect is called the American Community Survey. And that's a really neat survey where you don't have to wait every 10 years anymore to get updated information about the communities that you're working in. We also do an economic census every 5 years, and the years that end in 2 and 7, where businesses get a census form from us. And we collect information on them, such as what industry are they in, what was their first quarter payroll, how many people do they employ, are they a veteran-owned business, are they a women or minority-owned business, and businesses love that data. That's a key component of the GDP. There's a lot of stuff that comes out of the economic census. We also have information on foreign trade. That's a really hot topic recently also, with people are interested in foreign trade and trade deficits. The census has the tools where businesses that are out there exporting go to our website, and they have to input what they're exporting, who they're exporting to. So it's nice. So you can go down, to a state level and see what kinds of things are being exported, imported via your state, and you can look at that info. We also have international data. We have an HIV/AIDS database that we've been putting together with USAID for many years, looking at HIV trends across the world. So we have so much information that it's really impossible for me to talk about everything in the time we have today. So I just kind of wanted to give you maybe a little hint as to what we have available. So one thing I like to say about the census is it gives us data about our past so we can prepare for our future. So the two main demographic data sources, if you're interested on data on people, the two main ones are the decennial census, which I spoke about earlier. We conduct that every 10 years, and that's considered the official count of the population. Last census, we only had about 8 questions on there. It was very, very basic, the information that we gathered. Every month, we conduct what's called the American Community Survey. This is a monthly sample of the U.S. population. So about 5% of U.S. households a year get a form from us. And those are called characteristics because this is a survey as opposed to a true decennial census. And based on the population level, you can get 2 different sample sets. Populations with 65,000 or more pop can get a 1 and a 5-year sample. The 1-year sample is 12 months worth of data, so it's very timely. And then they can also get the 5-year sample, which is 60 months worth of data. And for small communities like the one that I showed you, that map by census tract, we used the 2014 5-year sample to get that information because it was a smaller community. So here's about the 2010 census. Once again, like I said, it was one of the shortest forms in history. We marketed it as 10 questions in 10 minutes. So the subjects that we asked in 2010 were how many people were in the home as of April 1st? Was the home, the apartment, the mobile home, was it owned or rented? What was the sex and age of the people living in the home? What was the racial makeup? And were the people of Hispanic or Latino origin? That's the only thing that we asked during the 2010 census. For the American Community Survey, we asked similar questions that you find on the decennial. So we have those age questions, race questions, sex, Hispanic origin. But we have other additional questions that we ask. And this is really what I call kind of like the meat and potatoes. So if you're going to be looking at target marketing or any sort of characteristics about a population that you want to serve, this is the information. You'll get it from the American Community Survey. So you have information on education levels, marital status, fertility. We ask women 15 and above whether or not they've given birth in the past 12 months. We have information on grandparents who are caregivers. Those are grandparents who are responsible for caring for their grandchildren. We have data on veterans. We have some information on disability status, where people were born, whether or not they're citizens, what year they entered the U.S., what kind of languages are spoken, and ancestry and tribal affiliation. This is just a sampling of the questions. It's about a 40-page questionnaire, so there's lots and lots of information that you can get from the ACS. We also have economic characteristics on the population. So we can show you data on income, what kind of income do people have, whether or not it's through a job or Social Security or retirement, whether or not people are employed, what kind of occupations do people work in, what sorts of industries are they in, where they work, how they get to work, what kinds of insurance do they have. We also have information on the housing stock. We have some really great information on housing if you're interested in that data. I work with realtors who look at this data, people who want to open up beds and breakfasts. I recently worked with a local utility company who was looking to market solar panels for particular homes and zip codes in Philadelphia. So they're really interesting in the housing stock, who was living in the house, how old was the house, what kind of utilities did they have. So we've got information on tenure. That means owner versus renter, the occupancy and the structure, the housing values, What kinds of taxes and insurance are people paying? What sorts of utilities do they have? And mortgages and monthly rent. The utilities one's an interesting one. If you go back to many of the other data sets that the census have, we asked people, did they have radios? Did they have telephones? And now we're asking whether or not they have broadband internet. So it's a nice sort of way of going back in history and really seeing how the U.S. has advanced as far as its communications. So this is our website, Census.gov. If you haven't been to our website before, this is what it looks like. There's a couple different tools that we have on here. When I did those quick facts for the city of Syracuse, I used that tool called Quick Facts right there. So it's really simple. You would just go to the site, you would click on your state. So for instance, you would select New York. And then you can even look at data for the state of New York. You can type in Syracuse. It'll give you data for Syracuse. You can compare the Onondaga County to the city of Syracuse to the entire U.S. And you can look and see what's going on with all different geographies. It's a really, really cool tool. To get to American FactFinder and some of the other tools on our website, you'll click on that fourth tab up there that's called Data. And then you're going to click on what's called Data Tools and Apps. All of our apps and data tools are accessible via this tab. Okay, so here's what it looks like. So you'll see American FactFinder, which is a tool that I'm going to demonstrate. That's Census Business Builder, which is the tool that I use with that the business that I was working with. You can get that there. You can get data for congressional districts. Quick Facts is also available there. And anything else, you can always click on the left. There's called Data Tools and Apps Main, and you'll have access to all of our data tools that way. Okay, so here's a screenshot from American FactFinder. This is our most popular and our biggest tool, and this is where you can get some really neat tables and make visualizations like I did showing the poverty for the city of Philadelphia. So there's really three ways to get data here. First is community facts, which is that first one up on the left. You can type in a city, a state, a county, a zip code, and it gives you some really quick facts on a city. So if you want to know population data, you want to know information on veterans, housing info, and you don't want to dive too far into FactFinder, you can use that community facts right there. On the lower right side, there's a box surrounding a little kind of like cross street sign. It's called address search. This is a really cool tool as well where let's say you don't really know a lot about the geography. You don't know what congressional district you're looking for or what census tract you're looking for. You can put in a street address, and what the FactFinder does is it gives you all of the geography that's associated with that street address. So for instance, I was working with a grant writer who was working on a grant, and the application wanted to know what block group he was in. And he had no idea what block group he's in. I don't even know what block group I live in. But he put in the address for the school, and it told them what block group that it's in. If you work with an organization that gets grants through the federal government repository grants.gov, they'll ask, what congressional district is this facility in? Once again, you can put the address for this facility, and it'll tell you what congressional district it's in. And you can even get the data by congressional district. So we do a lot of the heavy work for you. The main part of FactFinder is what's called the advanced search, and I'll talk a little bit about that later. Here's a screenshot of the community facts, where once again you can put in a zip code. For instance, here I put in a Philadelphia zip code of 19801, and it tells me offhand what was the population during the 2010 census. I can look at the population for the latest American Community Survey data. On the left-hand side, I can get data by age, education, housing, income, poverty. I just click on those little blue tabs, and the screen updates and gives me the data that I need. Here's the search by street address. So once again, you'll use this search if you have an address and you want to know what types of geography are associated with it. Okay, so here's an address for Wilmington, Delaware, and what it gives me, it tells me what state it's in, what county, what block, what census tract, what metropolitan statistical area, you name it, it tells you the geography that's associated with it. You just click on the blue hyperlink for the geography you like, and then you can start looking at all the different tables we have. The advanced search is the most powerful tool where you can filter by geography, you can filter by topic, you can filter by specific year or product if you know what you want, and if you're looking for business or economic data, you can filter by industry or NAICS code, which is a code for every industry. Okay. So for instance, I'm going to search for census tract data. So I go and I went to my geography tab and I selected the census tracts for the information I was looking for. For this example, I believe I'm mapping out data for Syracuse. So I went ahead and said, okay, I'm going to select all my tracts for the city of Syracuse, and I want to know what kind of data is available. Okay. So you can see here you have your topics box where you can go ahead and filter by data by people or data for housing. You can go ahead and look at race and ethnic group data. If you want business data, you can filter by industry codes. And then we have a specific tabulation for EEO or equal opportunity information by jobs. We have that information for the data as well. Then here it starts off, FactFinder will always give you the latest data available. So for instance, the 2014 American Community Survey is the latest data we have. In the fall, the 2015 data will come out. So that's our cycle. We're about a year behind as far as the data for the year. So in the fall, we'll have the 2015 data. Okay, so for instance, I want to look at, let's look at poverty data by census tract for the city of Syracuse. So I went ahead and I selected poverty, and what FactFinder does is it'll give you the top 3 or top 4 most frequently accessed data sets. So those are the ones that have the little yellow star next to them, and they're highlighted in kind of like a beigey color. So for instance, if I'm looking for poverty data, I can get poverty status for families, poverty status in the past 12 months. I can get data for food stamps or SNAP. You know, there's a lot of different tables related to poverty. So one thing I forgot to mention about the American Community Survey, when people receive the survey, they can either get it in the mail, somebody will visit their home, or they can fill it out online, or speak to someone over the phone to fill it out. It's what it's called self-identified. The person that's filling out the survey for their household is telling the census what's going on in their household. Okay, so I always tell people that because people always ask, well, how do we know this information is good? We've been doing this for a very long time. ACS has been around for 10 years, so our statisticians are very good at testing all the different data when they come back to make sure that it's very valid data. Okay, so what instance for this table, I'm looking at table S1701, which is called poverty status in the past 12 months. On the left side, you'll see a blue box that has some different dates. I'm looking at the 2014 data. I can go back and look at the 2013 or the 2012 data. So if you're doing an analysis of an area, you can go and look at different data sets and do some trends. You can modify this table. So let's say I wanted to download this table, but I don't want to go ahead and take everything. I just want specific variables. You can remove stuff. You can also add and remove geography. So maybe you want to add other census tracts or take away some of the geography. You can click on the Add Remove Geographies. You can bookmark and save this. So what you can do is you can create a hyperlink, and you can take that link and you can mail it to other people, or you can save that link so you can go back to this particular table. I like this feature a lot because I'll work with a lot of data users and they'll say, can you send me this information? And I can go ahead and do all the research for them, send them the link, and take them right to the table. You can print this down, so it'll create a PDF of the table, and you can go ahead and print that out. So if you're putting together a report or an application, you can go ahead and put the data right in there. You can download the table in a CSV format, which you can open up in Excel or Access. So if you have a GIS, which is a mapping system, you can pull it right in there as well. And you can also create a map, and that's what I'm going to show you next, the next step. I'm going to look at this poverty information by census tract, and I'm going to create a map for the city of Syracuse. Okay. So what I've decided to map is I'm going to map by census tract the percent below poverty level by sex. So I'm going to look at females. So basically what am I doing is I'm looking at the number of women by census tract for the city of Syracuse that are living below poverty level. So I click that little create a map sign, and then I go ahead and select my variables, and then I click show map. It's very simple. Okay, so I had to zoom in a little bit to get a really good map, but here is a map that's similar to the one I did in the city of Philadelphia, but this is showing again the number of women that are below poverty in Syracuse by census tract. So there's quite a few tracts that are in that sort of darker green color. So the 71 to 90%, there's quite a few of those, up until some of the outer areas where there's less women that are in that category. Okay. So that's basically what I wanted to show. I just kind of wanted to give you guys a quick overview of all the different tools that we have available. And I'm more than happy to work with you. Even, like I said, I cover Pennsylvania and Delaware, but I do work with people throughout the U.S. who contact me who are looking for data. So this is my email address. I'm at noemi.mendez@census.gov. And if you're on Twitter, you can follow me on Twitter. I'm always tweeting about data sets and census data and some of the events that I go to. I'm at Divine Miss N on Twitter. So that's basically all I had to say. Thank you for coming this afternoon. I hope you learned a little bit about what this Syracuse graduate is doing, and learned a little bit about census data and what our federal government is doing to help businesses and entrepreneurs and grant writers and schools get an understanding of the communities that they're serving. So unless Jenna had anything to say, I think that's it for this afternoon.
Thanks, Noemi. There is actually a question down in the chat box from
Sure.
John. It says, can you please provide a little more information regarding the international data capabilities?
Okay. As far as international data or foreign trade, I can talk a little bit about that. So we have an entire foreign trade division or international data division, and they do quite a few things. One of the things that they do is they act as a contractor for other countries who are interested in how the census has done their surveys or their censuses. That we go out and we show them, and we bring them over to the U.S. and show them, some of the ways that we conduct censuses. I used to work for a field office during the last census, which they set up specific offices, and they go out and they do the census, which is totally different from our everyday duties. So we do that. We have different divisions that deal with different components of foreign trade. So we have a division that looks at steel import and export, or diamond export and imports. Like I said, any company that is exporting data has to go to a specific portion of our website under foreign trade, and they have to fill out a form, a document called it's under the automated export system. And we work in conjunction with Border Patrol. And what the businesses do is they have to tell us who they're exporting to, what is it that they're exporting, what's the value of the exports. And that information has to be filled out before they can even export that info. So when customs is looking at their exporting materials, they have to have the information has to jive together. So that's one of the things that we do. And then, like I said, we have that HIV/AIDS database where we work with agencies through USAID, and we're collecting information on HIV transmission rates. So there's a really neat map and database that you can go by country. And you can look at the HIV rates, and I think that goes back to at least 1999. So that's under if you go to Census.gov and you can type in foreign trade, you can type in HIV/AIDS database, you can type in some other things, and it'll take you to the page that deals with that information. Oh, John has one more question. Oh, good. Okay. And once again, please feel free to reach out to me and say, hey, I was part of your webinar. This is what I'm thinking I can use census data for. Sometimes people ask me questions and the census doesn't cover that information. But one of the other things I do is sort of act as a librarian, so I can try to find you a data source that you can use that may or may not be census related. I'm more than willing to help you find something. So thanks for the question, John.
Great. Thanks again, Noemi. Thank you, everyone, for joining us today. I hope we all learned a little bit more about Census and what you can do with it, and then hopefully to participate when it comes to your door or phone, because it clearly helps us understand how we can grow as a professional in the business world, as an entrepreneur, whatever it may be. So that is, oh, I see someone is typing. Good. That is all the time that we have today. And since there's no lingering questions, I'm just going to go ahead and leave that up to you if you wanted to contact Noemi via email or Twitter to ask any further questions that you might have. Please look for our follow-up email that will alert you to the on-demand status of today's event. The recording, like I said, will be posted, and then I'll also share that via email. And there will also be a survey in the email. Please take a minute to complete that. We are ever changing and growing with this program, and since it's so new, I definitely welcome all of the feedback that you would like to provide so we can continue to make it a better experience for everyone involved. The next one will be on July 20th. We have another alumna joining us that day, again from 12 to 1, and you'll see information about that come out down the road probably about a week before. So have a great day, a great holiday weekend. Here's to some good weather and sunshine and relaxation. And thank you again for participating. I look forward to seeing you in future events.